It might not be heaven, but you can see her from here.
Hi, this is the Professional Amateur Hour coming to you with another review. This week, Leo sent me a screener for Buffalo Daze, and this 2025 film was directed by Ryan Lavelle and stars Brady Jedry, Eric Nelson, and Crystal Lightning, among others, of course. So what is the story of Buffalo Daze? Well, with this one, it's supposed to be the true story of Jim Grinder, who's like this half-indigenous cowboy, and he, I guess, steals some cattle or cows or horses or something, and gets thrown in prison, then gets out and joins the rodeo. But most of it is just people talking about him or just kind of moments in his life. What will happen though? Well, for that you gotta watch the movie and find out. And so let's discuss this movie. So what works with it? Well, it tries to give an interesting perspective on the Wild West, or at least kind of towards the end of the Wild West. And even then they're in Montana or something, so it's a lot of kind of grasslands rather than desert. But they are mostly doing it from the indigenous perspective, certainly with the conversations that they have some truth about them, about how the indigenous population, made agreements with the incoming settlers, and then the settlers just broke those ones as well, and they talk about how can we trust that. And then even then, kind of in the background, the government is trying to make it illegal to have like a mixed race marriage. So even then, Jim Grinder being half indigenous, he would be an outlaw by birth as well. So they only mention it kind of towards the end, but it's just something that's thrown in there. A lot of it does have that kind of political aspect to it, where they are telling you about the terrible things that people have done to each other. And it's certainly one conversation I think is worth having, certainly, about how do we go from here, right? How do we make amends for all the things that we have done to each other? And so it is an interesting perspective, and one that might be a little bit unique as well. Also, the way it's told is this kind of like in chapters, and each chapter is like kind of a conversation in a room, or a conversation in the bleachers at a rodeo or something like that. And they have this narrator in between the chapters. I like the narrator. I liked everything they were saying. He is certainly poignant with his kind of remarks, and certainly he is very emotional when it comes to what's actually being said or what they're implying is happening. And so that I thought was a good way of just kind of showing it as well. What else? I think it's all really well shot and filmed. Certainly it's very clear and crisp, and the lighting, I was really impressed with all the lighting, certainly with their costumes as well. With that lighting, it all looks really good. Really looks like it's got some high level production, the filming quality. So that is good as well. And that brings me to what doesn't work with this one. Well, it feels very much like an after school special. Here in this country, they made something like that as well. It was called Our History. So the government creates kind of these, hour-long episodes of well-produced moments in history, and it just feels very much like that. Feels like it's, like well-produced moments in Jim Grinder's life. And even then, he doesn't show up until like 35 minutes into it. So it's them talking about it and talking about, of course, the other indigenous issues. So it certainly feels like something that a history teacher would, press play on in their class, and you can just watch. It does have that certainly feeling to it. Even then, it has a message as well. Don't be racist. Feel for the indigenous community, which I guess someone might call woke. And so if you are anti-woke, this is not a movie for you. But I think that's a good message to have. Don't be racist, certainly, and don't treat people poorly. And it just doesn't come across as something that is made other than for education. A lot of it is just, people talking about him, or, him talking to other people. So that is an issue, I would say, at least for the entertainment value of it. Like, I thought the message and everything else was interesting, but it just got to feeling much more like kind of this history lesson. Also, with this one, it is a low budget one, so it's just a lot of people talking in rooms. I enjoyed, what they were saying, putting context on stuff, but it is not very exciting that way. I don't even think they fire a gun in the whole thing, so that's kind of, just lowers the level of excitement throughout the whole thing. Even then, the great finale is that Jim Grinder rides a buffalo in like the rodeo or something, and then the way that's filmed is not very interesting. And so there's a lot of kind of just slow paced stuff happening, and that is certainly an issue, I would say. Oh, and then there's one thing as well. Jim Grinder at one point just like wears a fake mustache, like in a bunch of scenes too, and he's just like talking to his wife at home at one point, and he's still got the fake mustache. I guess it shows kind of a time jump system or something like that, but man, it's the fakest mustache that you've ever seen. And so that is certainly goes all into it to make it for certainly a, let's just say, slow pace experience. And so would I recommend this movie? I would say generally it's going to be skippable unless you're in, a history class or something like that. Then, watch it for that interesting kind of perspective. But for most people, yeah, you don't have to watch this one. As for a rating, well, ultimately, I'm going to give it the 3.4 because I thought it was very meh. I could go up to a 4. It's kind of just, an average film, but not very exciting. So yeah, I think 3.4 kind of works for me. And with that being said, I think that's all I wanted to say. So like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.